So I wanted to bring you this video last week when Dragon Ball Super was at the same amount of episodes as GT, but unfortunately my schedule didn't really allow that, so I've had to wait until now to actually do this video. It's a topic I've always wanted to discuss, and I thought that around about now was the right time to do it, with the fact that GT and Super are around the same amount of episodes these days. But it's a question that people have been asking for the last year ever since Super was announced. What's a better successor for Dragon Ball than Dragon Ball Z? Is it GT or Super? Now we all know that Super is the official continuation of GT and Dragon Ball. We all know that, Z and Dragon Ball. We all know that GT isn't canon, and that's fine. You know, if people want to sit there and say that GT to them is the better one, and they want to consider that the official ending, you know what? That doesn't really bother me. Just to those people, just be aware that it's not the official ending. Super is. But yeah, if you want to consider the ending to actually be GT, then you know what, more power to you if that's really what you want. But I wanted to discuss which one I think is the better continuation for the series. Obviously this has no bearing on which one actually is the official continuation of the series, because as we all know, Super is that, not GT. But I wanted to offer my little opinion as well. You know, it might be you might agree, you might disagree. Let's keep it civil in the comments. You know, if people comment saying they prefer GT and you prefer Super, let's keep it civil. If you prefer GT and somebody else prefers Super, let's just leave it at that. You know, you can have a discussion, but let's not have any bullying or things like that in the comment section, because I won't stand for that. But yeah, just to preface this, I don't hate GT. I actually quite like GT. I know a lot of people don't like GT because of various things, and I understand. I'll get into all of that as well while I discuss this. And I also realise that there's a lot of people who don't like Dragon Ball Super, and again, I can understand, and I'll get into that for the reasons why as well. But yeah, I'm not biased in this. I like GT, I like Super. I obviously have my preference, which I'll get into as this video goes on. But my preference will be for logical reasons, and I'll try and lay them out as best I can. Be aware, this is generally a gaming channel, not generally a Dragon Ball channel, but I absolutely love Dragon Ball, and every now and then I feel the need to talk about it and actually discuss it. So if you're new to this channel, this isn't typical content for this channel. It is just something I felt like doing because it's something I enjoy doing. So the regularly scheduled sort of stuff on this channel will be coming on over the next few weeks, which is generally gaming stuff, and there's going to be a lot of Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 stuff coming on in the next few weeks as well. So the Dragon Ball content doesn't stop here, but if Dragon Ball's not for you, there are other topics and stuff that are going to be coming up on this channel. So without further ado, let's get into the discussion. We'll start off by how we were introduced to both these series, because in my opinion they both started off pretty damn weak. In Dragon Ball GT, which is obviously chronologically speaking the first one because it came out in 1997, Dragon Ball Super started in 2015, so there's nearly 20 years there between the two series. We started off with Pilaf, Shu and Mai, who I don't believe made a single appearance in Dragon Ball Z. I think their last appearance was in Dragon Ball, which is a bit weird, but it kind of goes along with the theme of Dragon Ball GT. They tried to keep it very Dragon Ball. They took elements from Z as well, but they tried to keep it very Dragon Ball oriented, so that's not really a surprise. We start off with them trying to find what's called the Black Star Dragon Balls to summon the Red Shenron, who apparently has a lot more power than the green one. So it's a bit weird that these Black Star Dragon Balls were never mentioned once. Even obviously we know that they shouldn't be used because of the fact that the Earth will blow up a year after they're used. But it's weird that Mr. Popo and Dende and Kami or whatever never actually even mention these things. It's just weird how it pops up like that. But yeah, that's one of the things that people don't like. It didn't really make a lot of sense. It didn't really kind of factor into the continuity of the series very well, so I understand why people don't like that aspect. But that leads into the first big mistake that GT actually made, which was they accidentally turned Goku into a child. Now, again, I get why they did this. They tried to keep this very sort of Dragon Ball related rather than more Dragon Ball than Z. So I get it, but a lot of people didn't like it, and it kind of goes along with the light-hearted atmosphere they tried to give the first arc, but that kind of gets defeated when you realise the fact that while they're having these light-hearted adventures, the Earth is actually about to blow up thanks to the Black Star Dragon Balls being used. That kind of puts a damper on the entire thing. The arc itself is pretty damn boring, with the exception of a few highlights here and there. There's not really much to discuss with this arc. There's not a lot I actually remember about it, because not a lot of it was very memorable. But And it led into the Baby Saga, which in my opinion is the best saga of GT, which obviously introduced Super Saiyan 4, which in my opinion is one of the best transformations for Super Saiyans we've ever been exposed to, right behind the original redhead Super Saiyan God. That is my favourite Super Saiyan form. Not too keen on Super Saiyan Blue personally, but Super Saiyan God is my favourite and Super Saiyan 4's second. So GT didn't exactly start off very well, but it led into a pretty decent arc. In fact, it's my favourite GT arc, the Baby Saga, which introduced a whole load of elements, including a theme that would later pop up in Dragon Ball Super, a villain that we can actually identify with, that being Baby, one of the original inhabitants of Planet Vegeta, if I remember right. And he has a big problem with the Saiyans because of the fact that they exterminated his entire race. So you can kind of understand the motivation behind Baby. Up until this point, Dragon Ball villains were pretty cookie cutter, pretty pretty fucking, to the formula, I should say that. Frieza just wanted to take over the galaxy, Cell just wanted to kill people, Boo just wanted to kill people, all the villains in Dragon Ball just wanted to kill people. I don't remember there actually being any real motivation behind King Piccolo, apart from the fact that he was just evil, for example, or the Red Ribbon Army just wanted power. So a relatable villain was something that we'd never really seen in Dragon Ball before. It was something very refreshing. So Baby gave us that, and obviously we'd see that later on the Goku Black and Dragon Ball Super. But moving over onto Super as well, it didn't exactly have the best start either. We had a very weak arc for Dragon Ball Super, in which they retold the story of Battle of Gods, a film which literally came out about 3 years ago, or 2 years before this series actually started, and didn't really add much to the story. It was just sort of retelling the film with, let's face it, worse animation. Episode 5 aside, because they did correct that in the home releases, it's obviously going to have worse animation in the film because of the fact that there's more time restraints and less of a budget to actually put on the TV series. So I'm not going to use that. I'm not going to start bad-mouthing Super for its animation, although it is something that I will have to factor into my decision whether or not I prefer Super or GT, because obviously, given the choice, we would all obviously rather have the better animation. But I'll get into that a bit later. But the first arc of Dragon Ball Dragon Ball Super was literally just retelling the story of Battle of Gods, and it told it in exactly the same way as the film, except it dragged it on longer than it had to. It did improve on some of the aspects. For example, the fight between Goku and Beerus was a lot more epic in the actual TV anime series than the film. The music behind the God transformation was a lot better in Dragon Ball Super, but it's not really enough to warrant an entire saga dedicated to it. Especially with the fact that you realise that, I can't remember if it was one episode or half an episode, or an extremely painful amount of time was dedicated to Oolong playing rock, paper, scissors with Beerus. That was insane to sit through. Unlike GT, the boring arc that started off Super didn't exactly lead into anything mind-blowing or amazing. It led into the Resurrection F Saga, which again was a retelling of the film. They added a few things in to the saga that they didn't have in the film. For example, Piccolo actually dying, and Togoma getting his body stolen by Captain Ginyu, who actually made an appearance, which was a surprise, and it actually added an interesting element for the time. But looking back, it didn't really add anything worthwhile to the arc. There's not really anything in the Resurrection arc, the Resurrection F arc, that I'd actually sit there and say, yeah, that was actually worth sitting through. Again, it was another I don't even know why they retold these stories. They didn't need to be retold. If anyone didn't see the film, they can pick them up pretty damn cheap these days, or watch them online or something. Like, there's no way that they had to actually retell these stories. But to be fair, when you compare it to GT, the next arc was the Super 17 saga, and it didn't exactly add anything to the series either. I can't remember the exact details of it because it's been a while since I've seen GT, but it was something about Android 17 meeting up with an Android 17 from Hell when the border between the living realm and Hell opens up and they fuse to form Super 17, and then Goku just basically turns Super Saiyan 4 and beats Super 17. There's not really anything groundbreaking about that. The Super 17 saga was kind of enjoyable, I guess, first time round, but it's kind of generally the saga that people skip when they rewatch GT. So, whereas I'm not giving Super any points for the second saga. I'm not really doing that for GT either. And there's one thing I do want to mention as well while I'm here. The use of secondary characters is so much better in Super than GT ever did. In the first saga, GT made good use of Goku, Pan, and Trunks, but outside of those three, nobody else really got a shine. It wasn't until the Baby saga that we started seeing, Vegeta use, and that was only to be Baby's bitch, which was fine because of the fact that, Baby actually taking control of Vegeta was where most of the actual action took place, so I'm fine with that. Baby himself wasn't exactly that powerful, he needed Vegeta's power, and that was fine. I love the fact that it led to the resurrection of the Uzaru sort of form, which we hadn't seen since the start of Z. And I like the fact that it introduced the Golden Uzaru, which was sort of like harkens back to the story Vegeta told when he was talking about the legend of the Super Saiyan and the Frieza saga. So it showed that Toei actually is familiar with the series that they're actually trying to continue. And a lot of people badmouth GT for not following the continuity of the series, but that itself shows that Toei is at least a little bit familiar with the source material. So I love the fight between Baby Vegeta and Super Saiyan 4 Goku, and things like that. But aside from that, there's not really much use for any other characters. Every other saga after this basically is Goku just fighting for Super 17 and the dragons. And no character really gets a shine, even after the first arc. Trunks and Pan, they're just support characters for Goku, and that's a shame. Piccolo shows up at the end of the Baby saga to allow himself to be blown up with the Earth to destroy the Black Star Dragon Balls. And it's a shame that a character as good as Piccolo only had really that to shine in GT. He just showed up to sacrifice himself, which I didn't have a problem with Piccolo showing up to sacrifice himself. But if it had a bit more of a showing, that would have been a lot better, because if you're not really familiar with Z or Dragon Ball, and you just started with GT, you'd just sit there and you'd think, who is this character sacrificing himself and why should I care? They should have built this whole moment up from the start with Piccolo, and just GT's use of secondary characters was absolutely terrible. Whereas Dragon Ball Super tries to give people things to do. Now, while characters like Yamcha or Android 18 and Tien don't really do much in Super, Bulma's got a shine quite a lot. I mean, she's in the future Trunks arc at the moment, in the future, trying to give some sort of helping hand to Goku, Trunks and Vegeta. We've seen Kid Trunks actually try and talk his future self into stop being such a whiny little crybaby. That was a cool little moment as well, that Kid Trunks got a chance to shine as well. We've seen episodes completely center around Trunks and Goten. Even if they're completely just filler, just light-hearted stuff, that's absolutely fine, because it's giving them something to do. And even Baby Pan has had her own episodes based around her and things to do. Piccolo as well has had some pretty funny moments in the series, as has Krillin, and things like that. They've done so much more work to actually make these secondary characters look and feel more important than GT ever did. So Dragon Ball Super definitely gets points for that. However, on the flip side, you got to give GT its dues. I said I was going to talk about animation, and I'm going to have to, especially when it comes to talking about which series is actually better. And this does factor into it. I don't complain about bad animation as much as everyone on the internet seems to, but it definitely does need to factor into which, when discussing which series is better. And in my opinion, GT had so much better animation. I'm much more of a fan of that sort of classic era style of animation. Obviously, it's done a lot differently now. It's very much digitalized. A lot more than it was back then, and I much prefer the more sort of hand-drawn aspect, I guess. The colour palette as well, in my opinion, was a lot better in GT. Things seemed a lot darker in GT, and some of the colours seemed a bit off, but the colour palette in general, in my opinion, was better than it is in Super, and the animation's a lot better as well. It felt like there was a lot more attention to detail, but again, in my opinion, GT just had much cooler designs for the most part, and for the most part, it just looked a lot better. For whatever reason, I don't know whether it's simply the fact that I'm much more of a fan of the old style of animation, or whether it's a combination of that and the fact that, to be fair, episode 5 and some other episodes as well have had some pretty shoddy looking animation. Again, it's not something I get focused too much on, but it's something that definitely has to play into my decision about which series is better. Moving on to the third arc, for both series, which will be the last series for GT, but not the last arc for Super. We've got the Eternal Dragons arc. In my opinion, this arc could have been a lot better than it actually turned out to be. This is actually the perfect way of ending a Dragon Ball series, and ending what was at the time believed to be the ending of the entire Dragon Ball universe. Is having the idea of all their past wishes coming back to haunt them is an incredibly creative idea, and something that, in my opinion, the end of Dragon Ball needed and still does need to actually have. You know, obviously this ending doesn't count, it's non-canon, but I would like to see this be how Super ends, because it's such a creative and fitting ending to the series that I can't fault this at all. The only thing I can say is, for those of you who don't know, GT was actually cancelled around the Super 17 arc, and the way it works in Japan is they allow you to finish telling the story you're telling, but you've got to kind of rush through it, whereas in America and most other Western countries, it just sort of they sort of cancel the show, and no matter where you are in the story, it just sort of ends there and then. So GT got a chance to tell this story after it being cancelled, but they kind of had to rush through, and it really showed, and it's a shame because the series would have ended on such a higher note. It might not have even ended at this point if it hadn't been cancelled, but you know, it would have been so much more epic this arc would have been instead of actually giving it the time of day. The problem was they hyped up all these dragons that had come out of the Dragon Balls. There was like 7 of them, 1 for each Dragon Ball, and unfortunately most of the dragons went unused for the most part. And up until the point that they introduced Ice, Nova, and Omega Shenron, there's kind of no point to any of these dragons, although the ending for GT was so much better than the ending for Z, and in my opinion the ending for Dragon Ball as well. Such a fitting ending. They left it ambiguous about what happened to Goku, which I really, really like. So yeah, GT in my opinion had a very, very strong ending. Now obviously, while I can't talk about the ending for Super because it hasn't happened yet, I can talk about the Universal Tournament and the Goku Black arc. So the Universal Tournament introduced a load of new characters, some very interesting characters with interesting abilities such as Magetta and Kabe, and characters like that. And the twist with Frost and Hit as well. Hit's an insanely popular character, and in my opinion there was so much more they could have done with this arc as well, but again, most of the fights ended sort of way too quickly. For my liking, they were very one-sided and very biased towards Universe 7. But, you know, they've kind of hyped up this next Universal Tournament arc, which hopefully the original one that we saw on the last saga was actually just sort of, let's say, a teaser for the next arc. Think about it in terms of wrestling, for example. You've got Raw where they hype up the stories and they give you a teaser of what you're going to see, then at the pay-per-view you see the actual match. And I see the 2 Universal Tournament arcs kind of in the same way as that. And I think that's an interesting idea, and I can't wait to see if they actually capitalise on that, bring some of the characters back like Kabe and Hit and that. They've, you know, show how they've grown since we last saw them, and actually get these, you know, 2-sided epic fights that we really need to see. That's something I'm really looking forward to. But the arc itself, as it stands at the moment, isn't something that's very memorable apart from the new characters. That's really the only thing you really remember it for. The Goku Black and Zamasu arc is by far the best arc Dragon Ball Super has done so far. In fact, it may be one of the best sagas Dragon Ball has had ever, because they introduced the character Zamasu, who has this complex about beings who are lesser than him, you know, beings that aren't gods, and just really wants to rid the world of these you know, lesser beings. And you know, Goku Black is terrorizing the future, and there was a lot of mystery around who he is. Don't worry, I'm not going to give out any spoilers from this arc. I've got to wrap this video up soon anyway. But Goku Black is this mysterious character that's around with Zamasu in the future, and I apologise about that, guys. Yeah, it's another, again, just like the Baby Saga, it introduces a villain that actually has this creative backstory. There's a lot of mystery surrounding them, and they've actually got some sort of sense of justice. They believe they're doing the wrong things for the right reasons, and that's always an interesting character trait for a villain. It's always something that you can definitely get behind the villain for, and kind of support them in a weird way. even though obviously we want to see Goku and his friends defeat Zamasu and Goku Black, we still kind of feel for these characters, and we still love these characters exactly for that reason. So, which series do I think's better? Well, they both got off to a really rocky start, but in my opinion, Dragon Ball Super beats Dragon Ball GT any day of the week. I love Dragon Ball GT, I will go back and watch it, I have it on DVD, but Dragon Ball Super, if you ignore the first 2 arcs, is pretty damn good. In my opinion, the Goku Black arc is one of the best sagas we've ever seen from Dragon Ball ever. I love the way they built it up. I love the way it's kind of broken the formula for Dragon Ball in a way. In the past, it's simply been evil shows up, Goku fights it, either wins or loses, gets stronger, comes back and wins. But Goku had fought enemy, lost to enemy, got stronger, come back, lost to enemy again, got stronger, come back and lost to enemy again. And it's just this new concept that Goku, no matter how strong he gets, just can't seem to beat this villain on his own. So it's always been the formula though. Like Goku rid almost every villain in Dragon Ball and rid almost every villain in Dragon Ball Z. And in Dragon Ball Super, he can't really do it on his own, so he's got to get help. And that's an interesting concept for Dragon Ball. It's kind of been explored a little bit in the past, but never to this degree. So, in my opinion, Dragon Ball GT kind of took the Dragon Ball formula and kind of built on it, but didn't really do anything too innovative with it. Dragon Ball Super took it, broke it a little bit, built on it, innovated it, and tried to see what new things they can come up with. Dragon Ball GT even went as far as to steal certain storylines from Dragon Ball, play them out almost exactly the same way, in a way of trying to pay homage to Toriyama's style of writing, whereas Dragon Ball Super kind of says, right, this is Dragon Ball Toriyama's style of writing, obviously because Toriyama's kind of guiding the scripts, or not really necessarily the scripts, but the direction of the stories overall. Kind of says, right, this is Toriyama's style of story, let's see what we can actually do to try and make it slightly different, make it feel fresh, make it feel new, but also keep to that Dragon Ball spirit, and that's exactly what they've done with Dragon Ball Super, and it's something I definitely can't wait to see in the future. Apparently Dragon Ball Super is outdoing One Piece now, which is insanely big news, because One Piece has been sort of this untouchable Toei property for a very long time. Now that Super is actually not only caught up to it, but surpassed it in certain ways, obviously shows that Dragon Ball Super is insanely popular. It's these sorts of things that's going to keep it on TV for a long time to come, and I'm really excited about that prospect. Dragon Ball GT I loved, but there was a lot of problems with it, and one of those problems was the fact that it got cancelled so soon, and it didn't really get a chance to live up to its potential. Dragon Ball Super seems to be given that chance, so I'm really hoping Toei don't drop the ball with this. The next arc, there's a lot of expectations on it. Toriyama's going to announce it in December. Hopefully it's something amazing. Can't wait to see it. Yeah, let me know in the comment section below anyway what you think or thought was better, Dragon Ball GT or Dragon Ball Super. There are no wrong answers, guys, remember that. You know, drop a comment in the comment section below. Just don't rip anybody else apart for their opinions. That is their opinion at the end of the day. Some people might prefer GT, some people might prefer Super. Try and steer clear of spoilers in the comment section below. But yeah, I'm not too fussed on things like that, because most people are aware who watch Dragon Ball about different things in Dragon Ball Super. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.